Welcome to Interesting Choices, the show where we find movies, TV shows, books, albums, and other media that make interesting choices. I'm one of your hosts, Sky.
I'm your other host, Kate.
Hey, Kate.
Hey, Sky.
And today we have one that will probably hold the title for having the longest title for a while, I'm thinking.
Yeah, it's pretty long. It's up there with Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon.
Yeah. And we're going to be doing The Last Dragon too. So, we are taking a look at Jeff Wayne's musical version of The War of the Worlds, which is the full title.
Specifically, the DVD recording of the 2006 stage production of War of the Worlds.
Yeah, originally it was a 1978 concept album / rock opera.
And then it just became this thing that had this like decades long life.
Yeah, and I don't know, when I first saw it on Hoopla and I saw the title, I was like, okay, I'm listening.
I actually have a long history with Jeff Wayne's musical version of War of the Worlds. Going back to, I guess, high school, my friend Kirk and I would play video games together, and he was super excited about a game called Diablo, and he was like playing all these, PC games, and he loved RTSs, and then he brought home this one day, and I was like, what are you playing? And it was Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds, the real-time strategy game for the PC. It had the dopest music that I've ever heard, and I was like, what is this? It took me years to find out that this actually was an album first, not just like a weird video game soundtrack.
Yeah, and looking at the Wikipedia, there have actually been like 5 or 6 games released based on this album.
It's a video game franchise that you've never heard of.
I mean, in every way, shape, and form, this is pretty much exactly what we look for when we're trying to find something for the show. It's like everything's out of left field. For
the first half of the show, I felt the same way that I felt watching the movie version of the musical Cats.
And how is that?
I was so dumbfounded by every single one of their choices that I was like, what is this? What is this? Oh my gosh, what is this?
Yeah, there's a lot of choices going on here, from the floating styrofoam head of the narrator to the giant tripod set piece that comes down about midway through and is there for the rest of the show.
Yeah, so to give you a bit more context, what we watched was a cinematic recording of a stage production, sort of like if you are a fan of Hamilton, the Hamilton movie, right? The cast performed it on stage, but they cut it together to make a televisable, DVDable version of this stage performance.
Yeah, cutting to different camera angles, so it's not just staring one shot at the stage the entire time, which I kind of appreciated because the lighting gantry over the crowd was arranged in such a way that it looked like spider legs, and then throughout the show they'd illuminate each one in turn, so it looked like it was walking over the audience, which I thought was a cool touch.
There were a lot of really cool touches in the show itself, like in both the production, in the staging, but let's draw back a little bit and describe how it actually is produced. Because if you've seen a stage musical, you expect an empty stage, then people to come on, do their singing, dancing, whatever. That was not what we watched.
This is not that. No. It's much closer to a concert, but even then, that doesn't really encompass everything going on.
My partner, she said it was most akin to her watching the Trans-Siberian Orchestra. I thought it was very much like watching the Gorillaz in concert, where you have the band on stage and they're kind of doing their thing, but then there's a giant screen that's showing the narrative and a lot of the action, and then occasionally you'll have people walk on stage in full costume to come out and sing and emote and act, but solo in front of the band, including one Mr. Jeff Wayne himself, who's conducting this entire large music section.
There's effectively 2 music sections. There's the traditional prog rock part of the ensemble, which they call the Black Smoke Band, which is made up of a who's who of British rock icons. Maybe not icons, but mainstays, definitely. And then they arranged their own string orchestra, the Ula de Bula Orchestra, to also be on stage and play.
And they are vastly separated. Like, the string orchestra looks like a string orchestra, right? They're all dressed in their formal wear. They're arranged in concentric circles, kind of like an orchestra. And then on the other side, you have this prog rock band wearing like peasant blouses and weird like vests and cravats, and like they look like a prog rock band.
Yeah, specifically, I remember the bass player had like it's like really frumpy 1960s ruffly shirt, like a wrinkled orange, almost like a rotten orange peel orange vest that wasn't closed all the way, just kind of hanging off of him.
There was one guy in the numerous synth section. There were like 5 people playing synth at once. This is a very synth heavy production and album.
Yeah, it's very heavy on the prog part of prog rock.
One of the synth guys had basically a shaved head, except he had these 2 tiny like little pigtails coming out of like kind of where horns would be. And you're like, he looks like he got kicked out of Prodigy, but he's a middle-aged man, and I loved him. He also whipped out like a tar, which is kind of an Iranian instrument that I was like, oh, this is prog rock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, zithers, the tar. I'm going to forget all the instrument names, so I got to scroll down.
There was a cool lady with like an electronic xylophone.
Auto harps, mandolins, so many keyboards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-ish keyboards.
So many keyboards. It's wild. But they use the heck out of those keyboards. Like, if you take nothing else away from this episode, I entreat you as the listener to go to YouTube and load up Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds and just listen to that opening overture, like where the Martians come to Earth, and it is dope as hell. It was like the sickest track, and it's all synth.
Yeah, and to further set the stage, there's sort of a catwalk in between the 2 very separate sections. There's a front stage area for the actors to walk in front and play, and then in the back there's a giant screen that has projected images on it throughout that sort of fill in the rest of the narrative. And then just to the left, there's a giant blank head, like a 10-foot tall head that has the narrator's face projected onto it when he's talking. But it's still there when he's not talking.
The narrator is one like star of stage and screen, Richard Burton, from Cleopatra, Richard Burton.
Yeah.
No one would have believed in the last years of the 19th century that human affairs were being watched from the timeless worlds of space.
Who I believe had been dead for 22 years by the time that this was actually performed on stage.
Let's find out.
He died in 1984.
Wow.
So they had a recording of him, and so they did some sort of video effects magic to like lip flap this picture of him onto this giant styrofoam head so he could narrate the whole thing, but it looks uncanny and weird. He kind of looks like a video game cutscene render where like the mouth moves and they kind of have occasional expressions, but the eyes don't really ever reflect what they're saying.
Yeah. And knowing now that he's dead, which I probably should have noticed when I looked it up, that makes it that much more unsettling.
The disembodied voice of resurrected holographic Richard Burton.
And then, like I said, there's a gigantic tripod set piece that comes down in the middle, and then there's a musical number, or not, the whole thing's a musical number, but there's a bit later with the artilleryman after he comes back, and they lower a giant bridge down too, and that was something else.
That was weird. It basically looked like an aluminum scaffolding that they lowered above him, and you're like, why are they lowering that aluminum scaffolding? Is anyone going to get on top of it? No. No, not at all. It was just a weird set piece. It didn't make sense until his song actually started, and you're like, oh, he lives underground. That's the ground. He's a mole man.
Yeah, he gets up and dances on it a little bit, but like, I don't know that it's entirely enough to justify it being there.
No, it's an entire giant set piece that someone built and had to rig and like secure for safety, and it's absolutely not necessary.
Yeah, it's like a 15-foot tall aluminum bridge just coming down for no real reason.
Yeah, just for one number. Like, they could have literally just projected a bridge up on the screen and it would have had the same effect.
Yeah. But as far as the plot goes, it pretty faithfully follows the original book. And I gotta say, when the Martians come out of the crater and start zapping people with the heat ray, that guitar heat ray thing that he was doing with the slide, that was dope.
It was really cool. There's also an unreasonable amount of vocoder in this.
Yeah.
Throughout the entire musical, there's just this like line that's like, "Oh Lord," in the vocoder. It's super good. A lot of the stuff that they do with the instrumentation that reflects the stuff on screen and in the narrative is super cool. Although they super overuse the like Doctor Who sound.
Yeah, that got a little annoying after a while.
Yeah. I've heard this described as the most faithful adaptation of H.G. Wells's book.
Yeah, I went back and I looked up the summary, and it's pretty much beat for beat, except at the very end where there's a bit with some NASA guys that isn't obviously in the book because it was written in the 1890s.
It's a weird thing. It toured for a while. I think it started in 2006 in the UK and Ireland, and then made its way all the way to like Australia and toured for
it's like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, to like 2011. And then they're doing another tour, but with a new generation.
Yeah, Jeff Wayne decided that he wanted to redo the album and then did another tour. And I think the latest tour date I saw was 2018 for the 40th anniversary.
They have a new tour that was supposed to go on this year, but I think they pushed it to next year. So it's the 15th anniversary of the original staging. And this new generation one stars one Mr. Liam Neeson as the disembodied holographic narrator.
Yeah, he was in for the 2012 and the 2014 ones, as well as the 2016 and the 2018 too, which is really weird because on Hoopla, it has the release date for the 2012 one, and it lists Liam Neeson in the cast. There's very obviously the 2005 one, 2006 one.
If you were lucky enough to catch it during December's The Show Must Go On, the sort of program that the UK theater community has been running on YouTube as a way to benefit both their own actors and productions, but also other charities. They showed a DVD release version of the 2012 one around Christmas. And then in late December, which is when we're recording this, they currently have the 2006 one streaming until like mid-January, I believe. So you won't be able to catch it because you won't hear this until it's too late. But if you were lucky enough to catch it, you could have seen Liam Neeson on YouTube as a hologram.
Yeah, and I think that's the only major deviation from it besides the guys from NASA at the end is that the journalist character from the stage play is an amalgamation of two characters, the narrator and his brother from the book. And then in the stage play, the narrator has a fiance, whereas in the book, he has an unnamed wife. It's really something that we've got this classic of literature, and the narrator, his brother, and his wife all remain unnamed throughout the entirety of the book.
Yeah, so the whole thing starts off as this like really over-the-top prog opera thing with like narration from Richard Burton, and you're like, okay. And then like this dude comes out kind of dressed like Doctor Who, and he starts singing, and that's a thing. And he's the sung thoughts of the narrator. It's weird how they like credit people. Yeah,
he is Justin Hayward, lead singer of the Moody Blues.
It's wild.
I gotta say, though, I kind of dig his suit.
He comes out and he sings for a bit amidst all of the band and everything. They're just like right behind him, just equally lit. And then he kind of just like waves, like walks off into the back. And then more stuff happens on screen. It's super weird. All these other characters come out and it runs through the story. But it's split into two halves. The first half is kind of the Martian invasion, and the second half is life under Martians. And that happens after intermission. And I got to say, I really liked the first half. It was a lot more dynamic and a lot more exciting. And the second half had a lot more like, woe is me character songs.
Yeah, I feel like especially the part with, or all the parts with the parson, like I enjoyed his performance. He was very good. I didn't like them as a part of the overall narrative. And in the first part, especially the ending, the part with the battleship Thunderchild, which if you're a Trek fan, there is a Kara class ship named the Thunderchild in First Contact. So, nerd alert.
Yeah, I wasn't paying super good attention when that song came on, and then they started singing about Thunderchild, and I was totally lost until I looked it up. And I was like, why are these 1890s ass people singing about a Thunderchild? But yeah, it's some giant boat that like goes and blows up a bunch of Martian tripods in order to let people escape.
Yeah, I loved that part. And then I found out that the guy singing it is actually the lead singer for Manfred Band and did the lead vocals on, what was it? Shining Like a Light, Shining in the Light.
Blinded by the Light?
Blinded by the Light. There we go. Thanks for letting me down, brain.
Racked up like a deuce.
Another runner in the night.
Yeah. Yeah, like this has a bunch of heavy hitters, and they did the same thing for the Next Generation. They have a bunch of like very famous people from contemporary bands. Weirdly enough, my partner took a guitar lesson from the sung voice of humanity, I think.
Yeah, that's Chris Thompson, aforementioned Manfred Mann's Earth Band singer.
The new one.
Oh, okay.
The new one is someone else.
Okay.
But it doesn't matter. It's a weird production. It's a weird production.
This was somebody's baby. Like, someone had the reins on this, had the money, and made all the decisions, and no one was there to say, maybe don't have a giant aluminum bridge.
For the new generation, they're like, no, we got a better, bigger bridge this time. That was one of the selling points.
Oh my god. When the tripod model set piece, I guess, came down, I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
That's the part where I was like, oh my god, I'm totally just blown away by all of this, and I do not know if I am in reality anymore.
It's not just there. It's fully, it has internal lights. It has spotlights coming out of the thing. It's got a red spotlight to simulate the heat beam, which sweeps over the audience. And I feel really bad for anyone who caught that in the eye, but
in the new production, they actually got a real heat beam to shine at the audience members.
Oh no. Oh, those poor people.
It's so weird. It's so weird. Like, I don't really know how this became such a thing, but in 2018, Jeff Wayne's musical version of War of the Worlds was like number 18 on the Billboard chart.
I mean, I don't doubt it. This music is pretty darn good. It's pretty decent in most places.
But like, how?
I don't know. In all honesty, if someone had described this to me, and if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes first, I would think this was a joke. Like, 100%.
This seems like the sort of thing that you would include in a comedy to show that someone is an auteur who is utterly disconnected from the real world.
Yeah, or even just like a background beat or like a commercial in the background to sort of break up some sort of tension or the monotony of a scene. It's just sort of that kind of out there wackiness. If this wasn't played as straight as it was, I'm not sure I would have believed it had actually happened in front of my eyes.
I honestly don't know how to talk about it any more than what we're doing, because like it doesn't really make any sense as a production. It doesn't make any sense as like a musical. It doesn't make any sense that it should be as commercially popular as it is, but they have full sold out shows. It's been touring forever. I don't know. I just don't know.
For me, it seems like Britain is very obsessed with its own celebrities, which I guess makes a certain amount of sense given the US and our crap. but I can kind of see that. And there's just this sort of divide at a certain point where something can be popular in Britain, but not make the jump anywhere else, and still make a ton of money.
This is definitely one of those things where, like, if you talk to a British person, they'll probably have heard of this. If you talk to literally anyone else in the world, they'll be like, are you high?
Yeah, they'll probably be like, someone did a musical version of War of the Worlds. No, that's the whole title. That's all of it. Jeff Wayne's the musical, yada, yada. Have you played the game?
Yeah. So we didn't really talk about what stuff they showed on the screen other than like their scenes from the narrative. But Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds, the musical stage adaptation, features some of the worst CG and bad FMV that I've ever seen, and it's wonderful. It's like contradiction quality. I
mean, that's the thing about contradiction. It was just filmed. Like if someone tried to composite Detective Jenks into, 1890s London, then I could see that. This is good CGI for like 1998 as far as the tripods go.
I think they actually stole some of the CGI from the video game.
Yeah, I also saw there was going to be a movie version set for 2004, but that never materialized. But they did make some animations for it. I'm wondering if some of it ended up in the stage show.
Probably so. Like some of it looks really good. The red weed stuff looks really good. Some of the aliens look okay if you squint, but the tripods look terrible. They look so bad.
Yeah, weirdly enough, they look like a prog rock album cover.
But like made in Blender by your cousin.
Yeah.
All of the like shots of the crowd are this weird mixture of stock footage, like historical stock footage, and then filmed scenes of actors in front of a green screen running and doing things, but not
well.
No, not well at all. Like you can't really ever get the sense that any of them are scared of anything. They're just kind of like, oh, we're here.
Yeah.
I guess these aliens are killing us. Ha ha ha.
They're not so much characters in a narrative as they are actors on a green screen, and it is very apparent.
It's weird. I keep saying that, but like my brain is still having a hard time processing it because I just watched it 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, I did it last night. I have found that often I need like a night to process most of the stuff we watch, and that's helped me, especially in this case, which like I want to like it so much, and I do, but a lot of it doesn't quite gel together. This is definitely something you need to see. Whether or not it works for you is going to be very subjective.
Honestly, I had the same experience with it as I do with most prog rock things, where I'll be super into it for about like the first 10 or 12 minutes, and then I'll be like, oh, this is getting weirder. Okay, I'm kind of into that. And then at some point it loses me entirely. But then at the end, I'm like, all right, I see what you did there. I don't know if I loved it all, but I'm glad I went through it just the once.
Yeah, there's some really neat touches, and like it's definitely worth seeing for the spectacle by itself. It is spectacle, as much as you can have spectacle without fireworks or explosions, except they did have explosions.
Yeah, they actually get proper pyro effects in the tour, like later on. They just didn't film them for the DVD release.
I remember specifically a part that stuck out to me is in the end when the narrator kind of decides, okay, that's it. I'm going to run at one of these things and it's going to heat ray me and I'm going to be done with all this. The sung thoughts of the narrator is on stage, and then he walks down the catwalk, and then that transitions him up to the screen behind them, which I thought was a really cool touch.
Yeah, they do some cool effects like that. I think like when Beth dies, they do a similar sort of thing where she and Parson Nathaniel are having this like really long back and forth since he's lost his faith, and she's like, no, there's still hope, and then she gets like she just dies, but then she like walks off into the light, and then he's just left there to be like and chew scenery for like another 10 minutes.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the same in the 2012 one, but they have a big thing where he's convinced that she's one of the Martians or a devil or something. He's kind of convinced himself that the Martians are actually Satan's minions in another form.
I think it's the same thing. I think they just expanded some of the love story between the journalist and his fiance.
Yeah, because in the 2006 one, I think she gets 2 lines. It seemed really odd, but I'm glad they expanded that a little bit.
It's Anna Marie Wayne, who I believe is Jeff Wayne's daughter. She gets a little bit more screen time now that she's older.
It said it was adapted for stage by Doreen Wayne, which I want to say is his wife, but I'm not 100%. So I'm just perusing all of the versions of this on Wikipedia just to see, and then I stumble upon Jeff Wayne's The War of the Worlds, the immersive experience, which seems to be what we just watched, but as an immersive VR experience.
It was staged in this physical place,
the London Metal Exchange.
And it also had a steampunk-themed bar and restaurant and the Red Weed Bar within the experience. I don't know. Like, this really is a cultural touchstone for the UK in a way that I just do not understand.
Yeah, I don't get it. I enjoyed it. I'm not sure that I'd watch it again. I will definitely keep this in my brain pocket to tell people whenever people start talking about weird things they've seen.
Mm-hmm. As a side note, one Mr. Jeff Wayne has also dabbled in making a prog rock studio album of Jeff Wayne's musical version of Spartacus. Starring Anthony Hopkins, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Fish, Ladysmith Black Mambazo, and Scott singer Alan King as Spartacus. I kind of want to listen to this after we get done with this.
I kind of need that in my life. And then just perusing through the video games, we've got the original 1998 real-time strategy. Then they also made a third-person shooter in 1999 for the PlayStation.
Apparently people just love redoing War of the Worlds over and over and over.
Yeah, it's a classic. It's a touchstone of the genre. I'm not sure what Jeff Wayne was smoking when he said, I want to set this to music. I think the world might be a better place if everyone had some. And I'm probably going to try to find the vinyl for the album because I need it in my life.
He was 35 when he did Jeff Wayne's musical version of War of the Worlds. And it's pretty much been his life for the rest of his life, which is a wild thing to think of, right? Like, you just make this weird concept album and then it just becomes your entire existence for the rest of your life.
I mean, if you love it, and he seems to love it, he looked like he was having a great time on stage conducting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not a bad gig to have.
He has his fingers in like almost every production based off of this album. So he did work for the video game. He probably did a lot of stuff for the VR experience. This is his baby, and he just gets to live in it forever.
Yeah. I want to know what happened to the giant tripod set piece. I want to know it has a good home, but I'm not finding anything on it.
I want to believe that it's in his home, that like he just like has barbecues underneath it.
Yeah, either inside the foyer or like if he has one of those roundabouts just like in the middle facing down the front gate or something. Or on the roof. Yeah,
Jeff Wayne is such an interesting character. He's also like really into tennis and had a TV series called The Book of Tennis Chronicles, which is just about tennis, the history of tennis and events throughout the history of tennis. It's wild.
Like if you find something you love and that gets to be your life, how can you compare? But
yeah.
This is something worth seeing, whether you love it or not, just to have said you have seen it, just to be able to talk about the experience of seeing it. And it is an experience, very much.
When they talk about auteurs and they talk about people just loving their babies so hard and just wanting you to experience it in exactly the way that they had envisioned it in their head, this is the sort of thing that they're talking about. Like, this is a George Lucas level amount of involvement in the thing that he created, where he just keeps revisiting it over and over in different forms, just trying to perfect it in the way that like he believes it should be perfected.
What strikes me the most about that reading of it is that it's very much of The Room, but the difference being that Tommy Wiseau is very much not a filmmaker, does not know filmmaking. If you watch The Room and stuff, it's a lot like watching a film made by an alien and stuff is just done because that's how it's done in other films. And this was made by someone who does know what they're doing and knows what they want. What they know and what they want is completely insane, but it's very well done.
I mean, for the time, like, I guess it wasn't that insane because, like, you know, that's the era of Tommy, of Quadrophenia, of that sort of thing. The Wall, I guess. Like, people were doing all sorts of interesting rock operas And so if you were a music making person, a rock opera kind of would be the sort of thing that would make total sense. And what is more beloved than H.G. Wells's War of the Worlds?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the concept album goes, that 100% makes sense. If it was just the concept album, I was thinking more in terms of the stage plays and everything else.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how any of that happened.
Yeah, the part that kills me, though, is I learned about the stage play first, and then I learned about the video game. So in my head, that was the order they were in. But if you look at the timeline, the games came out first, and then they did the stage show like 6-7 years later. So
I guess they re-released the album in 2005, and then they were like, oh, people really like this. People are hyped for this. So let's just do a tour of it again, but make it like big this time.
And they made it big.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't get much bigger than like a 20-foot tall tripod with spotlights and lighting effects and smoke. And I'm pretty sure it was partially animatronic because about when the Martians die of the bacteria, the pod tilts to the left and then the lights inside sadly dim out.
Yeah. Wow. In 2021, which marks a momentous 15 years of live touring, the production can be up to 12 trucks. Wow. That's a large touring company.
I mean, I believe it. They've got a full, maybe not a full, but they have a string orchestra, a band, God knows how many instruments, the entire stage, the freaking haunted styrofoam head.
I think they got rid of the haunted styrofoam head in lieu of a Tupac-style glass sheet for Liam Neeson.
Yeah, that makes more sense. In the 2006 one, at least, it was there. It was very clearly hanging from a harness on the ceiling, even when it wasn't lit, and you could see it, and it was like just kind of there.
It's kind of hard to find right now because the 2006 version is not widely available in the US. You would have to probably see it on Hoopla. I don't think it's even on Amazon. You would have to buy like the DVD, and that's not cheap. The new 2018/20 whatever Liam Neeson version, 2012. The timelines are so fuzzy for everything.
Yeah.
That one was supposed to come out on DVD this year, but because of the Roni and everything, they ended up deciding to show it just as a special thing for The Show Must Go On, and then potentially will release the DVD, Blu-ray, whatever experience later next year.
Hoopla's probably going to be your best bet. It's, from what I saw, it was pretty widely available. You'll want to log on to hoopla.com and see if it's available in your area, if your local library has a partnership with them, but it's pretty widespread, thankfully. So there's a good chance you'll have access to it. But yeah, go check it out. Run, don't walk.
Yeah, go check it out. Or at the very least, if that's inaccessible, check out the albums. Those are readily available on Spotify and Apple Music, other places where streaming music is, or you can just buy the physical CDs. Even look up the trailer on YouTube for the stage production for 2012, because it'll give you kind of a taste of everything that you're going to get into.
You're going to get into something for sure with this thing. I don't know that I have anything more to say about it other than go watch it if you can.
Just make sure that you get the Jeff Wayne's musical version of War of the Worlds, because there are a lot of different versions of War of the Worlds out there. Probably, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, when I was just trying to look up the plot for the book, I had to sift through 2 different Wikipedia articles for 2 of the many, many film and TV adaptations before I finally got to the novel.
The other sort of major touchstone, I think War of the Worlds would be the Orson Welles radio broadcast, and you'll come across that one just as readily as you will Jeff Wayne's. So
just remember, the full title is Jeff Wayne's musical version of the War of the Worlds. That is the full title.
Wild. So watch it, listen to it, enjoy it, be amazed and astonished. Enjoy the sweet synthesizers and vocoders and tar and zither and every other instrument that you could possibly think of.
Heat ray slide guitar. There was a full-size harp, several different kinds of, my brain wants to say marimba, but that's not the right instrument, the one with the sticks.
There's a cool lady that plays the electronic xylophone in the recorded version, and it is dope.
Yeah. All I can say is find it, And Kate, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me listening to Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds, the musical version, on TikTok and on Twitter. And where can people find you, Sky?
You can find me on Twitter at shard_corso. That's SHARD_CORSO.
And if you want to find our previous episodes, you can find us on Spreaker at www.spreaker.com/shows/interesting choices. You can also find us on Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Spotify, anywhere else your podcasting travels may take you.
Yep, and we're also got back shows up on SoundCloud and YouTube now. Should have been that way for a while by the time this comes out, but yeah, if you have any suggestions for something we should watch, you can drop them on our Twitter at InterestingChoi6, INTRESTINGCHOI6. And if you want to support the show, you can do so by going to patreon.com/interestingchoices. And if you pledge at the $5 level, you can help us choose what we do next. I think that's everything.
Yeah, I think we're both still just dumbfounded by the experience of Jeff Wayne's musical version of War of the Worlds.
Yeah, I saw it yesterday and I made it take a nap.
I feel slightly high after just watching it, so I'm probably going to go take a nap myself.
As always, thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening. Later.
Bye.